All right, everybody, welcome to Off Ramp Politics. I am your host, Thomas Jason Anderson. Okay, wild show today. I know it's like, how could it be so wild? But man, reparations, that's a tough one. This is one of those topics that I had to create a platform for myself to be able to discuss because it carries so much baggage with it. Everyone I speak to in private, everyone's like, ooh, they don't, there's a lot of confusion around it. There's reparations has almost become almost a dirty word in American politics and in American culture because it's become almost divisive, and it's a situation where even now to speak about it is, for some people is like, whoa, why are you doing this when you've got all these guys in the America First movement and a lot of these MAGA guys who are just they're in the mood for white reparations. They don't want to hear anything about anything dealing with black people. They feel like black people have, in their minds, we have had it easy in America. We have had all the advantages and they have not. Um, Fine. With that said, a lot of this I'm speaking from experience, and I am going to have a guest on in a little while. His name is Daoud Sherrills. He's a community activist out of Los Angeles that's been doing for a few decades a lot of community development, redevelopment work, a lot of community activism work out there in Los Angeles. A friend of mine, someone that I've helped out with some of his work in the community there in places like Watts, Los Angeles, helping to redevelop and do some good work in Black communities that are depressed and aren't doing so good economically. That used to do really well. Like Watts used to be used to be one of the best, one of the greatest cities in America for Black Americans, and it's fallen off, and for many reasons. And Daoud can explain that when I bring him on, but this reparations discussion is one in which it applies directly to it. It also applies to, the theme of what my platform is all about, which is, trying to get us off of this fictional road that we're on politically and onto the road of reality, which is getting away from all of the corruption. And reparations is a part of that off ramp, I believe, of getting away from the corruption, because ultimately people look at, the situation of Black Americans in America, and many are saying, hey, you weren't a slave, you're not affected by that, but we are. We are heavily. I can speak from personal experience. We all can. Any Black American in America can explain from firsthand experience, but instead of just having to explain it, um, or you guys hearing from me, my personal experience. I don't want to give you that. I don't have to give you that, but I can just tell you from my own personal experience that it has not been a fair playing field, and maybe there never will be a fair playing field. But the one thing I do know is that it's imperative that as a nation we move forward on this race issue, and the real and only way to move forward on it is for America as a nation to recognize just how bad slavery was. And on top of that, to recognize all of the evil, duplicitous schemes and government maneuvers and local level maneuvers and everything that was done to make it so that even though slavery had ended on paper, we were still economically enslaved. We still couldn't go out and get a business loan if we had a business. We couldn't go out and get a farm loan. We still can't get loans as Black farmers. We're still struggling today. I could go on. Now, there's a lot of white people that say, oh, you're lying, you're making it up. You guys, you haven't, whatever problem you have, you put it on yourself. This is what they're thinking. Fine, whatever. What I'm saying is if we want to put this behind us, and we need to create some form of reparations. And I believe the one that I've come up with an idea on it. I think my idea is the way to go. I think some form of it is the way to go. And here's the reason why. Uh, First of all, let me get to why I came to this idea and why it's an important issue for me. Back in around 2009, 2010, I was doing some work in New York City corruption, and I came across a foundation called Buffney. It was the Black United Fund of New York, run by a man named Kermit Eady. And Buffney was an interesting foundation. They had created a situation where Black employees within city government or anywhere within the city could take a portion of their paycheck and contribute it to the nonprofit. And the nonprofit worked back then in the 80s and 90s to rehabilitate crack houses, to help fix rundown communities that were really torn up, like Harlem and other places that were just devastated by the crack epidemic. And so one of the programs that they had was back then Mayor David Dinkins, who was the mayor of New York City back then. He had given this charity a bunch of row houses in Harlem and all over New York City for $1 each. But each one of these properties was a rundown crack house. It was full of, vagrants. These properties were totally torn up. So they had to be totally gutted, totally refurbished, and this is what this nonprofit was doing. They were cleaning up communities that were destroyed and ravaged with the crack epidemic. They were taking these properties for $1, fixing them, and then renting them out to low income people. Well, over the years, this property portfolio that this nonprofit had ended up growing to something huge, worth maybe over $200 million, I think, because these properties in Harlem, which were going for $1 in the 80s because of the crack epidemic, were now worth millions of dollars. And once that happened, Governor Spitzer at the time decided to liquidate the charity, and he took all of the properties and dispersed them. And when I sent a FOIL into the state of New York to the Attorney General's office to ask them what happened to the properties, give me any documents related to how this charity was liquidated and how over $100 million worth of prime real estate was taken by the state. Like, can you give me documents? Well, the office basically took all of the paperwork and burned it all. They didn't have a single document mentioning this charity. Even though there's news reports, you can look now and you can see they shut that thing down and took the properties. There is no state record that this ever happened. There's no state record that the charity ever even existed, but you can go online now and you can see it. So when I saw that, I tried to find out, well, who stole all this property from this charity? And I went down, I found this guy who was running it once the state had taken it over. His name was Bob Williams. And when I looked at him, I noticed that he had given over $1 million worth of contributions to a bunch of politicians all over New York State, and he had given these contributions through different LLCs and different companies that he had formed out of his apartment in the projects in Queens. And I was like, well, how is this possible? How do you have a guy living in the projects in Queens donating over $1 million to all these politicians all over New York State? And at the same time, he's running this charity that had all these properties and they're disappearing. And so that's where you come up with this story. And I'll do a split screen here. That's where you come up with this story, guys, in the New York Times called The Mysterious Donor. Okay. So let me see if I can pull up uh, immediately, right? Let's see if it pulls up. Oh, here we go. So behind big political gifts, a mysterious donor. Okay, this is by Raymond Hernandez, Allison Lee Cohen, and Joe Craven McGinty. It is it is a small apartment in a scrubby section in Jamaica, Queens, where the average household income is $33,800, and many residents receive government assistance. But from this unlikely address, nearly $900,000 has flowed to the campaign accounts of powerful political players across the country. So this I found that. That's the guy who was throwing out that money out of that rundown apartment in Queens. He was the one running the nonprofit. The state gave him the authority to run this nonprofit, and he's the one who disappeared the property somehow. Somehow, some way. I don't know how. It's almost like I said, the state has deleted all the documents. And so when I was going down that line, that's when I bumped into Senator Bob Menendez. As you can see, Gold Bar Bob, because Senator Bob Menendez held a special hearing for this nonprofit in New Jersey. It was an outdoor hearing at some gymnasium somewhere in New Jersey, but it was a Senate hearing, an official hearing, or a House hearing. No, it was an official Senate hearing, And he did it for this nonprofit. This nonprofit I was looking at that was taking all of these that was losing all these properties that had been given to it, and I couldn't figure out where they were going. And so that's what brought me down the road of Bob Menendez. That's what led me to investigating him, which led me on a 15-year trail to writing the book called Bar Bob with Isabel Vincent. And so along all these lines, this is where I came up with an idea for reparations. I saw that Buffney Fund and I said, I plugged that in with some other nonprofit organizations that I saw around the country that were government aligned or like mixed government and private sector type of situations that were doing redevelopment work in New York City and other places, and they were doing a really good job. And I thought, well, why not create uh, a sovereign wealth fund in the United States Treasury or in the Fed that can issue non zero tax bonds, non-taxable bonds, 30-year bonds, whatever, 50-year bonds, whatever you want to make them, just like the island of Puerto Rico. Like Puerto Rico has been for a long time been able to issue tax-free bonds. And that's how they funded a lot of what's going on their island. So I thought, well, why can't we have that for descendants of slaves? Why can't we have? Because see, I'm opposed to reparations where the government is taking cash from one citizen and giving it to another in their hands. Like redistributing wealth to me is a huge mistake for this reason. If you try to take government cash and give it to individuals, then it's not really the government taking it from other individuals, white people or others. It's the government the government's going to borrow the money. They're going to borrow it, okay? And they're going to then issue the cash out, but that borrowing has to be paid back. And who's going to pay it back? The people who receive the checks. Along with everybody else. So is it really reparations, the government giving out some checks? I don't think so, because really you're going to end up paying for whatever you got anyway, because that's all borrowed money anyway. So that's not really reparations, getting the government to hand out checks. I don't believe that's reparations. Reparations to me is what I'm saying, which is I don't think we should get a single penny from the government. Not one penny from the government. Not one penny from anyone forced to give anything. No way. I think what we should have is, like I said, a sovereign wealth fund, a reparations fund. And it is primarily for the descendants of people of slaves, of people who suffered under not only slavery, but Jim Crow and all the other redlining, all the other evil policies that were inflicted upon us and our ancestors for generations, you know, underneath that's who's going to benefit the most from what comes out of the reparations fund. But here's the thing about it. It's a deal where anyone can invest money in it. So anyone can purchase a reparations bond. And in 30 years, you get your money back with interest. And along the way, you get your dividend payments, right? So this is a situation where the reparations plan that I've come up with and I've written about it, it's one in which everyone can benefit from it. Even white people, even people who are descendants of slave holders, they can go out there and purchase $100,000 worth of reparations bonds. And guess what'll happen? They will be getting a dividend check on those every quarter. And at the end, they'll get their money back with the interest. So they will get paid. Even them, anybody can get involved in this. There's no one who's no, you can't. No, anyone can make money from it. And so creating a sovereign wealth fund that is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government that issues tax-free bonds, such a thing can be very, very powerful because in such an entity, what you can do is you can say, well, for the descendants of slaves, we can just take them off of Social Security. Let's just not even do Social Security. For them, we can take them out of the system. No more of that. They'll be taken care of through the reparations fund. Now, anyone who's against that, I think I would label a racist because here's a situation where we want to have a fund that's privately funded, no government dollars at all. And with that money, we use it to get a huge portion of the population off of Social Security so the government doesn't have to pay for them anymore. Who would be against that? Who would be against that? somebody who's truly racist, somebody who would be so angry because they would say, "Well, why is it that black people get to get off of Social Security? Why can't white people get off of it?" It's like, wait, so what you're saying is now is that you want people on the government dole? You see the problem with the argument? And so that's why I like this idea. That's why I've been talking to people like Daoud Sherrills about it, wondering, asking him, hey, can such an idea work in a place like Watts? Can we set up a reparations fund? Can we have a sovereign wealth fund that brings in money from companies like Nike who can donate money, who can purchase bonds and make money off of it? Can we, when that money comes in, what's the best way to distribute it? Is it best for some people to receive cash checks? Yeah, I think so. If it's is it good for some people to have their student loans paid off? Yeah. Is it good for some people to have their health care? Yeah. Paid for? Yeah. Right. There's so many things you can do with the fund, but I think the main thing you want to do is invest the money well and invest the money back into the descendants of slaves, into our businesses, into our property, into things that can bring a return and generational wealth back to us. And so this will be an entity that we can bank in, that we can get mortgages out of. Once again, it will not be government funded, not a single dollar from the government, all privately funded. But it's something that I think would not only put an end to all of the racial debate and the strife, but at the same time, it will provide a huge benefit to the Black community. We need something like this. We need to have more opportunities, not by through DEI or whatever it is. We need opportunities that we create for ourselves. And having a sovereign wealth fund that we can invest in, that we can get loans out of, that we can get mortgages from, that we can base our life around, that we can get off of welfare through, that we can get off of Social Security through. That's what it's all about. That's true reparations, if you ask me. Right. And so, with that said, I'm going to bring in my guest, Daoud Sherrills. Once again, Daoud is a good friend of mine, activist out of Los Angeles. His claim to fame, okay, is and it, bro, this is a big one. He's one of the main guys. He was the brains behind putting together the peace plan that ended the gang war between the Bloods and the Crips. So this is a man that brings peace, but he is a committed community activist. He's been at this for so long. He has a lot to share. I thought I would bring him on so we I could share with you guys some of the discussions I have with him. So here we go, Daoud. Hey, Daoud, how's it going? I think you're muted.
Thomas, good morning, good
There we
morning,
go.
good
Hey,
morning.
man. Good to see you, man. How's it been, man? How's it been out there in
Oh
Los
man,
Angeles? It's early.
it's early and I'm up early as always. I get up around 5 or 4. I think I talked to you, some of the first persons I need to talk to because you're on a different coast, and as I rise, I think you probably see more before I see because I'm asleep when you're woke. So it's early,
By the time you
like
man,
I
you wake up to it's a whole crash going on out here. It's like, whoa,
says.
bombs going off. It's crazy. Right? By the time you get up, I'm coming out, you calling me, my hair is already like it's like, oh, it's out of control over here.
It's out of control and things like that. But like I said, it's been a busy year for me, as always, as an activist, organizer. Then, like I say, running organizations. And I mean, Los Angeles, a total disaster. It's like ground zero. It's like, I mean, it's not the Los Angeles, of yesteryears. And today, Los Angeles has been devastated by homelessness, unemployment, the invasion of immigrants, fentanyl, drug abuse, and a lot of people probably see Los Angeles as they show some of these memes on social media platforms where this fentanyl crisis out here has rocked this whole city, and it's more look like a scientific movie, like the zombies and stuff like that, And so it's like, I mean, the population is totally dumbed down. Politicians taking full advantage of those situations, and I mean, California, Los Angeles itself is just rock with so much corruption that it looks normal. And so, just as an activist, trying to weave through these things and represent communities, and at the same time, as a person, I mean, it's insane. I mean, what we go through as American citizens, one of the most powerful countries in the world, and we still dealing with how to house people, how to get people jobs and opportunities. And I mean, we went through this during Jim Crow, during Reconstruction, and but it's crazy in 2025 we still talking the same conversation.
Right, and that's sort of why I thought of the reparations fund, and that's why I've talked to you about it about implementing such a thing because I think, the problems that we have in Black communities all over America are very unique problems. They're not problems that you can devise a plan for out of Washington D.C., and you're definitely not going to devise a plan for them out of your state capitals either. These problems have to be worked on a community level basis, and for these problems are so big and they're so a lot of these issues are international in nature actually. So like the drug
Yes,
issue is an international issue, right? and
yes, it
so and,
is.
and the only way to deal with it is on a local level, but how do local people deal with such a huge international problem? You see, and so that's where the disconnect is, and so that's why I've always felt, and tell me what you think. Bringing to the table, bringing to bear something in the private sector out of the banking sector, something like a sovereign wealth fund that could come into some of these communities and Watts and other places and bring development dollars to these places, bring business loans, bring dollars to bring in to build new charter schools, et cetera, et cetera. What kind of impact do you think that could have on the communities that you've been working with?
Well, I was a student and also being mentored by one of the greatest guys in our lifetime, Jim Brown. Jim Brown was the NFL yard leading rusher from the Cleveland Browns. And recently he just passed away. So he was my mentor for over 30 years. And Jim had a different way of looking at addressing some of our social problems. And he didn't believe in marching. Jim's always saying that, the civil rights movement, he was saying that the problem that they had, that they wasn't focusing on the right thing. They was just focusing on marching and protesting and all that. And they didn't deal with the root cause of the problem that we was facing, which is socioeconomics. So we developed a whole curriculum around the foundation of what was the root cause of our problems as people. And we developed a philosophy that addressed the socioeconomics. And what you're talking about is point on what Jim Brown was talking about. We didn't discuss and we didn't talk about so many things. We have voting, we have all these different things, but one thing that you know the conversation has not been had as it relates to all these past um, negative experiences that black Americans have experienced in this country, from colonialism all the way up to being an independent country, is socioeconomics. And that's a topic that no one wants to seems to talk about because certain people on one side who feel that, hey, we didn't do it and why should we have to pay, and um, it's like a topic that's not really embraced, and it should be embraced because we embraced every other atrocity that was inflicted upon every other ethnic group, such as the Holocaust, the Japanese, and many, many more. These issues was addressed. Things was set up. Commissions was set up. Fundings was set up. Except this one big problem that we face right here in America, we have not addressed that problem. So until we address it, will we discuss as far as in reparations, not in the terms of what people hear, because the word has been dragged through the mud and there's so much been tied to it that when you hear it, certain people just close their ears, and some people just, especially black folks, many black folks, just don't believe in it because it's been used in as a political um, talking point to motivate black folks just to get to the vote. And then once we get to the vote, then that conversation, dies out. And so it's something that we need to have today, especially in 2026. And when we talk about transfer of wealth and we talk about all these things that's going on across the world. It's like we're buried now up under rubble with these other topics, and we still haven't addressed the root cause as it relates to Black Americans here in America with this thing about socioeconomics and repatriation and reparation. I said repatriation first, then I said reparate. So, because we have to have our identity back, and most of us Black Americans, what we went through is reclassification from our original ancestral. Makeup to becoming what we are now, which is, we look at that, they call these things social experiment. So if we come from one era, whereas and we was gatherers and hoarders, and the way we made our living was through farming and hunting and all that stuff, to today wearing suits and going in corporate offices. That was a big a big change. But we have not, for us as Black Americans, have addressed our root cause of our problem, which is socioeconomic. So I would love to, see something like this and a topic like this really discussed, and also not just talked about, but how do we implement something of this magnitude that have an impact, what I'm saying, for everyone? Because at the end of the day, I believe in a perfect union amongst all ethnic groups. God didn't put us here for that we to destroy ourselves out of ignorance in order, but he placed us here to create a perfect union where we all can coexist. And it's just a system we need to set up to move ourselves forward and get out of this whole era of conflict and he versus them and that versus this. And it doesn't lay a foundation on what God promised was. And it doesn't lay a perfect foundation on what the founding fathers of this country talked about, a perfect union. And so here we are in 2025, going to 2026, trying to create this perfect union. And
Well,
Thomas, you're one of the most intelligent guys that I've met in my lifetime. And I mean, just the topic of conversation, and how do we move it to the ears and to the decision makers and the power brokers to embrace this type of conversation, and not just to talk about it, but to implement something that we all could be proud of as citizens, as human beings as a whole.
that's right. And here's what's interesting to me, and I've told you this before. I think, in my opinion, man, I think Trump is actually like the guy who could do it. Believe it or not, as crazy
Yes,
as that sounds, because he's the guy. He has the mind for this type of. He has a mind for community redevelopment work. Why? Because he's a developer. He's a
developer.
real estate guy. So
Yes,
he understands this in a very unique way that most politicians couldn't understand it. And on top of that, right, he would probably understand the economic power that would come with people being able to contribute or invest money into such a fund, and what that money could do while it's being invested, but on top of that, what it can bring back to the people who invested. So you have a guy like Michael Dell, who's putting out $6.5 billion to create these accounts for kids who are, like, under 10 years old right now, and who were, on the lower economic level in America, so that by the time they're, retirement age, they'll have a fund, some kind of money put aside, and their parents can give into, and family members can give money into these accounts that Michael Dell is setting up for these millions of kids around the country. Well, that, bro, that works, right? And I'm saying
yes,
we can have such a thing through reparations. We can create a sovereign wealth fund where people can privately, on their own, put money, invest money, not just put not see Michael Dell's putting money into accounts for these kids for it to be invested. We can actually get a fund and have the money invested holistically, where there are billions, maybe even trillions of dollars worth of value in this fund, and these investments can span the globe, so that there's a global reach from us. And I think the setup for the fund should be one in which, of course, the people running it should be descendants of slaves, but at the same time, we shouldn't just be exclusive to that. We should have everyone and anyone who's the best and the brightest in there to help us run this thing. And I think that's the way to go, because any type of solution or any type of reparations plan, to me, has to include everybody and has to benefit everybody, not just Black Americans.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And it's a new word that's been added to the topic of conversation. You just said it. Sovereign is it sovereign equity funds, and these type of funds need to be developed and set up so that it can, like you said, truly address historical systemic problems or issues that affect certain ethnic groups. Then and at the same time, it's a great benefit to the government, and it's moving us past this conversation of racism and reparations and all these other things that keeps us divided from on a political level. And only, I'm a, and most people probably wouldn't expect that, but I'm a Republican. I'm a big Trump supporter. Trump, I supported Trump when he first came down that escalator, because out of all the presidents that I had opportunity to watch and see and hear, he was the only one that mentioned African American by name, and let us know that we had nothing to lose, and that, giving this administration a chance to change our trajectory was something that he talked about many times on his campaign trails. He spoke.
Uh-oh. See, he started talking good about Trump, so they had to cut it out. I'll take him off. I'll bring him back on if he can come back on. So yeah. So so this is something I've been talking about for a few years now. I believe it's the answer to many of our problems. And there's a kicker to this. There's an added benefit to this that I haven't spoken about yet, but I Daoud knows about this. Um, there's a way to expand this fund out into the Caribbean and South America to the entire New World, and also to include the African continent as well. And that's through investments. The fund itself can invest the money into projects and developments throughout the Caribbean and Central and South America with communities of descendants of African slavery. And we can help those business people as well. So, and on top of that, we can also do things where we can create trade deals and other things with countries on the African continent. So, this is one of those ideas, a sovereign wealth fund, um, to act as a reparations fund. To me, that's the way to go. That's the answer. It's needed because it will put the entire race discussion to bed, and it'll also be a great benefit to a community that of Americans that we have suffered greatly for so long, and we have been the backbone of this nation in so many ways, and we've just never been given the nod or the tip of the hat or the thank you or the real apology for how, even though we suffered and we were really hurt badly in many ways, we never gave up, and we stuck to America, and we're still here, and we're thriving, right? And so this only makes it better. And if this fund succeeds, then guess what happens? Everyone who invests money, if it's white people who invest, they succeed as well. They get paid. So this is not one of those deals where asking for government cash and we're asking for to redistribute money. No, what we're saying is hey, let's do what Puerto Rico has had. Let's do what happened when the Cubans came over after when Fidel took over Cuba. When Fidel took over Cuba and chased everyone out, all these Cubans came over here to Miami, and they went to Republic National Bank, and they walked out with cash to open businesses, to purchase homes. Like, they were taken care of. Okay. It's not the Cuban community in Miami, they're not succeeding out of luck. Okay. It's not luck. They had a lot of assistance from the US government. And that's why you can see why they're so politically active, because we have very much assisted them, not only here while have been in exile, but we have assisted them in helping support them free their homeland. And that's what this Venezuela thing is a part of. This is an outgrowth of our relationship with the Cuban Americans who were forced out of Cuba and their fight with Castro, it has created what we're looking at today. And we're dealing with that now. So that's why having Marco Rubio as a Secretary of State while this is happening with Venezuela is a huge deal. It to me it tells you that we're coming to a close on an era, that the Castro era is over. It's over. And Maduro is the last remnant of it. And we've got all those battleships out there to remove that. And what will the world look like post Castro? We're about to find out, because that's what this is all about. That's where we're headed. And I think just in the midst of it all, it would be great for us in the United States to be okay racially and to be in a situation where we are all on the same page and we're not backbiting, we're not stabbing each other in the back, we're not trying to point fingers, blame this person, blame that person, that we can come up with solutions that work for everybody and put to bed a lot of the more contentious, toxic stuff that we've been having to deal with. Let me see. I think Daoud's back. Okay, hey man, how's it going? You're back. You're on mute. You got to get the mute off. There
Did you
you
hear
are.
me?
Yeah, I got. Yeah, you're back. Okay, yeah, man. Yeah, so with on the Trump front, like I've told you a million times, I'm not, I'm
I
not.
have a bad can't hear.
Oh, you can't hear? Okay, okay, I'll try to bring you back on. Okay, so yeah, so just so you guys know, I am not political. I am not on one side of the party or another. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I am a true independent. I'm that way because the solutions that I've come up with, they don't fit either party. It probably takes both parties to get this stuff done. I try to have bigger ideas. And so I'm okay working with anybody, whether it's Trump, Biden, Kamala. I can work with anybody as long as it's to benefit America, right? If it's all about transparency, if it's all about self determination, if it's all about freedom, if it's all about economic freedom and wealth building and generational wealth building, hey, I'm all here. I'm here to talk to anybody. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. It doesn't matter to me. Those issues rise above politics, and that's what the off ramp is all about, right? That's why I wanted to build this platform, because I want to be able to give people an opportunity to get off of the traffic jam of fiction of there's no solution. The racial problem is going to last forever. We need to have an all white nation to fix it all. These guys are getting frustrated, getting out of control. No, what we need is the same nation that we've had up until now, a nation that works together and find solutions over time to some of our biggest problems. We are not perfect, but we do find solutions. And I just think this solution that I'm giving on reparations, I think some sort of this deal is what we need to finally put an end to the racial strife in the United States of America. With that said, I'm going to finish off the show. I couldn't get Daoud back on. I'll have him on again, but I'm going to finish off the show now, just saying, hey, thanks for coming. Please share. Please leave any comments. We are going to continue to hit topics like this over and over again. Um, we don't care. I don't care. I'm hitting them head on because it's what's right. That's what we do on the off ramp. And I will see you again soon, guys. If I don't see you again, happy holidays. Thank you so much for joining. Take care.